Four wheels, two dudes, one sleeve full of music, and the last CD player on earth. They are Dave's in a car.
Should I read that this song is autobiographical? This is like actually a story her father told?
I think that's correct, yeah. Yeah, I was trying to figure that out today. That was something I was looking up this morning. I think she was in Johnson County, Kentucky, and I mean, famously, her father was a coal miner, and I mean, it feels true, doesn't it?
Well, that was always kind of part of her appeal, right? The things she's written feel true. They feel really, really honest and really, in a very clear way. Like there's not a lot of hidden poetry in the lyrics here. It's all sort of on the table, and it all feels very real.
Yeah, I mean, and famously at times autobiographical with some of the "You aren't woman enough to take my man."
Yeah.
This came out in 2004. I think my buddy Nate turned me on to this. He's not like normally a big country guy, but he was like, "You got to check this out."
Yeah, I can see this crossing genres really well, crossing fan bases really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, this came out in 2004, and it peaked at number 24 on the charts. Would you like to guess who the number one country artist at the time was?
Faith Hill?
It was Kenny Chesney.
Kenny Chesney.
Would you like to guess who the number one country album artist is right now?
Kenny Chesney.
It is Kenny Chesney.
Hey, it could be worse. Could be Luke Bryan or Jake Elmer.
Do you know anything about how this collaboration came to be?
Yeah, so apparently, so Jack White produced this, famously of the White Stripes, solo projects, Dead Weather, Raconteurs, and he and, as part of the White Stripes, they had cut a cover of Loretta Lynn's Rated X as like a single B-side to something, I think when White Blood Cells came out, and they had also, I think, dedicated the album to Loretta Lynn, and somehow word got through the grapevine, and she had retired. She basically stopped making music in 93 or 94. Her husband was dying, and he ended up dying in 96. So she really didn't come out with anything I think she came out with an album in 2000, but it was pretty much all covers. So this was really her first album of original material in a decade.
Huh.
And he asked if he could produce it, and she was like, okay. And so it's him, and it's a lot of kind of the people that he worked with in other projects too, I think. I think the sound is really interesting because like this album feels, I mean, this song feels very Jack White, and some of the songs feel very Jack Whitey, and then other songs, it sounds just like mountain music kind of.
Although his sense of tone, I think, slathers this album, to its credit. Like, because, say what you want about Jack White, the man knows how to get the tone he wants out of an instrument. And it's all got this really nice, dirty, but sort of acoustic tone. You can still hear the wood and the metal, but it's real gritty. I really like the guitar tones on this album.
I was reading that he wanted to cut it that way. He wanted it to, I think they made it in like 8 days or something. He wanted to use as many first takes as he could. He wanted it to have like a real, like, kind of organic feel to it.
One of the things that I really like is that one of the impressions I got listening to this album was that nowhere in the recording of this album was a metronome used. And it's just great. Like, it really feels gritty. It feels dirty, which I really like.
Well, it's kind of the Jack White aesthetic in a lot of ways.
And it just complements, you put her voice and her story over that, and it works beautifully.
She sounds great. I mean, like, he can push it as much as he wants because her voice is every bit capable of keeping up, no matter how, like, big the sound gets or how small it gets. It works with her voice.
Yeah.
And here we got, like, after two real, like, kind of bluesier numbers, we got, brush and it's like waltz time.
And also that I really like the way the pedal steel is done on this album.
Yeah.
It's not obnoxious and it's not repetitive. It's very understated consistently. It's also pulled back in the mix. Like, I think it's really easy because of the tone a pedal steel gets to put it way up in the mix, put it really in your face. And in this album, it feels like it's down the hall, and that's really great. Again, just sort of pulling out, but just creating an aesthetic, creating a picture.
It really adds texture to a track like this that would otherwise be very spare.
Yeah. Because it's really the only texture in it, right? This is drums and a little bass and that sort of haunting pedal steel with her haunting vocals. I really like the lyrical content of this song. It seems like it's about those moments of really serious doubt. Oh Lord, I'm sorry, there's trouble on the line. But when is there ever trouble on the line with God, But there are those moments. We all have those moments as people where it just feels like nothing we do is working out or going to help. And we're just left really lost, and you just kind of have to throw your hands up.
There's another track, God Makes No Mistakes, that kind of deals with doubt as a theme. And here's a classic Loretta Lynn, my man is cheating, and I'm going to take it out on the woman. And famously, I mean, Oliver Doolittle Mooney Lynn, he had a bunch of nicknames for some reason. He was an alcoholic, he was abusive, and he cheated on her a lot. That was the subject of a lot of her famous songs, like Fist City, and this is very much in that vein. It's interesting, but she stayed with them.
It's American family values right there.
Well, I think she's interesting in terms of, like, because she had some songs that were very progressive. The Pill, which dealt with birth control. She had 3 kids by the time she was 19. I think 5 or 6 total, and the birth control pill, she was a big fan in terms of not having like 20. And then Rated X was kind of a feminist song dealing with kind of the double standards that divorced women and divorced men had. Mm-hmm. But then she also espoused very traditional values at the same time. There wasn't like it's hard to bucket her clearly in one. Is she left? Is she right? Is she conservative? Is she progressive? It depends.
Yeah, she's a human being.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, maybe is why, like that's that same truth, that same quote-unquote authenticity, that rings so true in these lyrics. They're just very human, especially in the aggregate. That we're all hypocrites and we're all capable of...
Yeah. Well, and it's not all necessarily hypocritical.
Yeah.
We just don't have, not that many people have values and views that totally align with one of the dominant political parties.
Yeah.
Not to get all... but I think that was really big to kind of her building an audience, because somebody like Jack White was, younger, from Detroit, he's not from the South, but he can really respond to some of those more progressive themes in her music, whereas someone who is from a different environment might respond to, more traditional country values, which is also present in their lyrical content.
Yeah.
This treatment sounds very White Stripesy, like the drum.
This song rocks, though.
Yeah.
So my daughter immediately starts dancing when this song comes on. And does so with this kind of coy sideward glance. That's great.
What was the quote I sent you the other day? It's, drumming is always kind of a dumb exercise, but you can always make it stupider. It was Hutch from the Thermals talking about the drumming and No Culture Icons. Even like the guitar riff in this, it's just the same note.
Yeah. It's very old school rock and roll, It doesn't have to be flashy, it just has to be loud. Just hit it.
I love his guitar playing, Jack White.
Yeah, it's funny that it has so many detractors.
Does it?
Yeah, there are people who really disrespect him as a musician, and I guess I can't speak to it all that intelligently, but he plays from the gut and plays from the hip, and that's cool. And again, he's got a badass sense of tone.
Yeah.
I see bend it just a little. One note, but bend it a little.
He's not playing like Bach or anything, but I think he's playing exactly what he wants to be playing. Now this is almost bluegrass.
Yeah, this song, I'm pretty confident that's actually a washed up bass. There's no note there, it's just a thump of some kind.
She had kind of funny comment. She's like, well, we weren't going for a polished sound and we didn't get it. Or something like that. There's another one I'm pretty sure is autobiographical. It's just like a spoken word.
Yeah.
Guitar in the background. Just the details. She thinks her husband's going out with this woman in Paintsville. It's like, for some reason, the fact that that's in Paintsville has nothing to do with the story, but it totally makes the...
Yeah, little touches like that.
Yeah.
I would love to know how this was written and recorded, too. Was this just kind of free? It sounds a little too clean a recording for it to not have been written down ahead of time, but...
Well, the story is a little... There's sort of two stories here, and she doesn't quite connect them either, so... she just goes, oh, I forgot about the shoes. But she never really explains why she didn't die when she was sick and injured in the first part of the story.
Yeah, you almost wonder if it was just was there like a loose jam? Was this just kind of playing guitar, just picking a little and playing some loose drums, doing some sound checking, and then, let's keep that, let's throw something over that, That's that studio as an instrument is kind of what this feels to me like.
Yeah, and it's almost like whether or not that's the case, that's definitely what it's conveying to you.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
including
That's
it on the
intention.
album.
Yep.
It's like, oh, this is just loose, and sometimes we were just talking about stuff and just jamming guitar and see what happens. And who knows if it's really like that, but
This is a song that definitely made me question whether the intent had irony to it at all, or yeah, which maybe that's the point. Maybe you're supposed to read whatever you need to read into it. But I am easily mortified by notions of child death, so for me, like, I almost have to see a certain level of subtext in it that is doubt is appropriate.
I mean, it's the stuff it's not like, oh, why is this person mean to me? It's horrible stuff.
Yeah. It covers a lot, and it feels like in the aggregate we're talking about a person, we're talking about a human being, going through their life and having a time.
I think having like the autobiographical stuff in there, and something like this, like almost feels like just an alternate reality for her. Like one of the times she caught her husband cheating, if she killed him, this is what would have happened. Yeah, I mean, she was 72 when her husband had been gone for a while, so you have to imagine that death was something that she was thinking about at the time this album was made. Fortunately, she's still with us.
There's another one that just really kicks it into high gear.
Yeah.
But again, with contrast, like, I'm really glad, I'm glad that they don't do this on every tune. It makes the tunes that sound like this, they're real pick-me-ups.
Yeah, it's interesting how, like, it's almost like he decided, like, this is going to be a Jack Whitey tune, and this one is, this one we're going to do pulled back, or...
Yep. And this is another one where the drums have that sloppy feel, like, there's no restraint when hitting that cymbal, there's no choking it off. It's hit it and let it ring out, and let it wash over everything that's going on. And it sounds great.
That's his, this isn't Meg White, but Kathy once described Meg White as a meat hammer. And this is that, like, drumming quality to it. It's like... I always thought it was funny reading reviews of the White Stripes, and they'd be like, she has a real sense of when not to play. It's like, what does that mean? Let me close out with two, maybe the most autobiographical tunes on the album, the most personal ones anyway. So Miss Being Mrs. Really about her dealing with being a widow.
Mm-hmm. Was this her first chance to sing about that?
Well, she put out, her husband died in 96, and she put out an album in 2000, but I think she only wrote one song for that, maybe. So this was really her, and really I'd say her only, like, real, like, creative expression since, or after her husband's death. They don't fuck around with this at all. It's just her and the acoustic guitar, and that's all it needs. And again, like, the details, like, I took off my wedding band and put it on my right hand. It's like somehow that seems sadder than, like, everything else she's talking about, even though it's just such a small gesture,
Yeah.
And this song's called The Story of My Life, and it's just the story of her life. I love this too, like, just it's a lot happier, but, and even, like, kind of the things that derail her presented with, like, humor instead of...
Yeah.
I think this still might be my favorite song on this album.
It's great too.
Just, yeah. was critically respected. I don't know whether, you know, it led to, I mean, I'm sure it introduced a lot of people. Like, I wasn't really familiar with her work before. I mean, she really hadn't come out with anything significant in my lifetime before this album, so I'm sure it introduced a lot of people to her, and probably some of those people are making music now. And too, like, at the time, I mean, now I think it's a little easier to kind of draw the lines between what Jack White does and country music. But at the time, I think this is pretty surprising because occasionally you get something like Hotel Yorba that has like a little country feel to it in the early White Stripes catalog, but I don't think that's how most people thought about their music.
Sure.
And now I think you see what he's done since.
You can hear
moved
it more.
from Detroit to Nashville.
Yeah. So I only ever really listened to Still there. And it's a little. It would be tough to call out the country influence on that. That's a punk record.
Punk, blues, and rock.
Yeah.
And I'd say the album after that, White Blood Cells, you started getting a little of that country influence in there. But I'd say probably his later stuff in other configurations, he's explored that more.
And I think that's where the most interesting music comes from, right? Where those bridges are, where things clash, where influence crash together, and you get something that catches you off guard. You know?
Yeah, like if you don't know where to put something, that's where most of the interesting stuff is.
Yeah, and that's why I'll happily listen to any record like this, where it's it's not necessarily something you'd predict. It's two very good artists coming together to make something.
Yeah, actually, I've heard a couple more things now that I think about it. Where like Ryan Adams produced a Willie Nelson album a few years ago. I think Will Sheff from Ockerville River did Rocky Erickson's album a few years ago. Jeff Tweedy at Wilco has done a couple Mavis Staples albums. So I think that kind of has been a little bit of a thing,
Yep.
young buck produces album of, an old influence and kind of injects a new sensibility to it. The Charlie Brown Christmas album, that's the best Christmas album of all time. You can listen to that all year round.
Jingle Cats.
I don't know that one. Is that as bad as it sounds?
Yes, it is.